But yeah, I would say at least half of my rentals have groups right now. I have one that's booked out until August of 2027, which is like 2.5 years from now. I have another, I think it's either 2 or 3 that are booked out until August of 2026 already.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Quest for Keys, where we highlight key moments in entrepreneurs' lives that unlock doors on their path to success. I'm your host, Hoan Tai, and joining me is the ever-inspiring Alvin Wee. And today, we have a former doctor of pharmacy who retired at the ripe old age of 31, who then turned to become a real estate investor and became a millionaire by 28 years old through his high cash flow co-living system. Inspired by his grandfather, he built a portfolio by renting by the room, doubling rental income. Now, as a real estate coach, he teaches others how to maximize their cash flow, attract great tenants, and streamline their management. His thriving community helps investors secure one great deal at a time while providing top-tier affordable student housing. Please help me welcome Ryan Chaw. What's up, brother?
Thank you for the introduction, guys. I'm excited to be on the podcast and honored.
Yeah. So just to kind of, introduce Ryan a little bit. So Ryan, I met Ryan through, a group that you and I belong with, Hoan, called Go Abundance. And, he and I kind of connected, a couple of years ago? Was it 2 or 3 years ago?
Yeah, I think it was like 3 years ago or so.
Yeah. And that's about the time where I wanted to dive into other strategies that are working in California. As most of you guys know, I have a strategy here that I'm focusing on how to maximize cash flow on properties in California, in Los Angeles. And one of the things I wanted to check off was student housing and co-living. And Ryan is a specialist on that when it comes to student housing. That's why I wanted to bring him to the show, because he's also my coach on that strategy. So welcome to the show, Ryan.
Thank you so
for
much
being
Al.
here. So let's kind of just dive right into a couple of things. Let's get a little bit of a background here. How did you even get into your strategy? And maybe bring us back a little bit. Like did you grow up with wealth? Like let's go back.
Yeah, I definitely didn't grow up with wealth, but I saw my grandpa investing into real estate, and then he was able to kind of retire and help cover part of my college tuition and my brother's. So it did give me a little bit of a leg up. And then I just realized that that's one of the best ways to create generational wealth. And I wanted to live life on my own terms, basically be able to do what I want, when I want, with whom I want to do it with. And I loved, I got into pharmacy. I graduated in 2016 as a pharmacist, but I always realized that I wanted to do more than that. I saw these retired pharmacists, or these pharmacists in their 60s, and they were like hating their job. They're like, I wish I retired 5 or 10 years earlier if I could, to do what I wanted to do. And so that regret kind of really inspired me to get into real estate full time eventually. And so what I did is I slowly bought rentals, one a year in California, until I scaled it up to, I think, about 5 properties, making about $10,800 a month in cash flow. And then I eventually went out of state and use some of the equity and cash flow from my first couple rentals to buy another 9 properties out of state. So now I have 14 rentals, and each one I rent out by the bedroom. And that kind of was inspired by one of my college buddies. He rented out by the bedroom and was able to live for free and make cash flow on top of it. So using this strategy, usually you're able to cash flow anywhere from like $1,500 a month to easily $2,500 or $3,500 a month, depending on where you invest.
That's awesome. I've been hearing more and more about this. Why is it that people don't do it? What are the barriers that people run into? What dragons are they afraid of? What is it about this co-living space that causes people to not get started in that, even though the cash flow sounds amazing?
Yeah, exactly. I think the biggest thing is there's a lot of people at least are worried that it's going to become like a frat house, right? And they don't want partiers. They don't want to have policemen coming over and having to deal with that. And that's kind of one of the bigger fears out there. And I'll tell you, that's actually not the case if you invest the way I do. Usually what I do is I'll invest near top colleges. And generally I get graduate students. I want to say at least 90% of my students staying at our properties are actually grad students. And the reason is because most of these colleges, they offer housing for undergrads, but they don't have enough housing for grad students. They literally don't, and they cannot promise it just because there's new grad programs being created all the time. And so I called up this university and they said, yeah, we only have one grad apartment. And I called that apartment and they said, yeah, we're not taking grads this year because we had so many undergrads. So basically every single grad student had to live off campus. And so that's where we came in. It's a very good niche. We're charging maybe 600 or 700 per room versus the apartments are typically charging 950 or higher, like 1,000, 1,200 per month. And I provide a lot more privacy. And a lot of times I'm very close to the school. And just because I'm just more affordable and close to the school, I fully furnish my properties. A lot of students are like, this beats the university housing by a mile, right?
So what kind of like amenities are you offering when you're saying like you're beating the on-site by a mile? Like what is it that how are you differentiating yourself?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing first off is like we're half the rent. University again is like 1,200. We're like 600 a month. But also we don't charge for like laundry. We don't charge for parking. There's also plenty of parking available versus these apartments. You have to fight for parking a lot of times, plus pay like $100 a month for your parking spot. And we also have a lot more privacy, right? It's a bigger house. You have a whole room to yourself. You're also living with other students, so you can also bring in your buddies. And a lot of times I'll get like groups of 5 or 6 that all want to live together. And it's hard to do that with like 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartments or 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartments. They can't all live together. So they typically are searching for a house, like a 6-bedroom or 5-bedroom house, so that they can all live together, study together, and enjoy the university life together.
It's then everybody coming in at the same time. So you got like 5 people signing one lease together, or is it 5
Yeah.
separate leases, or how's that structured?
So typically I do separate leases, but if it's like a group of students, I might do one lease just to kind of simplify things. But it also kind of puts responsibility on them. If somebody were to like, leave or something like that, it's up to them to bring in somebody new. Otherwise, the rent will stay the same. So they're going to each individually have to pay more. But yeah, I would say at least half of my rentals have groups right now. I have one that's booked out until August of 2027, which is like 2.5 years from now. I have another, I think it's either 2 or 3 that are booked out until August of 2026 already.
Hey, so let me ask you a couple of questions because I am running into an issue right now I do have like roommates that I have under one lease, and one of them have left, right? And they're like kind of fighting over who's going to have to pay the difference, but they are under one lease, right? So that being said, have experienced both. What is a better approach for you? Is it just separating the leases, rent by the room, or is it as a unit?
Yeah. So honestly, I would say, I mean, there's obviously pros and cons to each. But what I would say is if you're in a city where it requires everyone to be on one lease, 1 or 2 leases, then you do want to do the full lease. That's the biggest determinant, honestly, because I want to be in compliance with whatever the law is. There are a lot of cities, though, even if you have like restrictions on how many leases you can do, you can usually get a change of use for the house. And so I did that for one of the properties. I did a change of use to a rooming house so that I'm allowed to do multiple leases. With that being said, I mean, like you said, there's pros and cons. If you put them all on one lease, it kind of puts a little bit more pressure on them to bring somebody in. But with that being said, I really focus on having the right marketing systems and the right referral systems so that we have constantly people coming in and interested in the house so that we can replace those people and help them replace those people.
So it sounds like ideally you'd rather have rent by the room model and separate leases, right?
Yeah, I would say generally that's kind of like what I do. Yeah, like over 70%. Yeah.
Are you allowed to do that even if you don't change the use to the rent by the room model? Are you allowed to still have those separate leases?
It depends. So like for my near UOP, all I had to do was get like a license to do that. I just had to get like a business license, and then I paid like I think it was like $100 or $200 to the city a year, and then I'm allowed to do individual leases. So every city is a little bit different. The other city I was talking about, you have to do a rooming house, and you want to be in like either a mixed use or a multifamily district, zoning district. But with that being said, a lot of cities do allow for individual leases and all that. You just have to do your research.
Got it. Have you had to evict anybody ever? Like individual?
Yeah, I think at some point, if you've been doing it long enough, you do have to evict somebody. But I've never had to evict a student. I've never evicted a student. I had to evict a Section 8 that we inherited from one of the previous landlords. And then I also had to evict one tenant that came from a previous landlord as well, was not a student. So I've only had to evict if I had like, a previous, or I inherited it from the seller. The other thing is once you send out your like 3-day notice to pay or quit, generally speaking, a lot of them will leave after 2 or 3 weeks. And usually I also have a property manager who explains to them the situation. Like they don't want to have an eviction on their record. Otherwise, they're going to lose their Section 8, subsidy.
Got it. So you don't even have to go through the whole entire process. Usually they'll just up and leave on their own.
Yeah. If you have the right person who kind of explains to them, you don't want an eviction on your record. Here's all the disadvantages of staying and having to go through the court and getting evicted. There's a lot with that.
When you're trying to like, do you target grad students specifically? Like, is that who you target?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I usually look at these top colleges and I'll look specifically for what grad programs they have. So I want a college that has opportunities for like maybe a doctorate degree, pharmacy, dentistry, medical doctor, PT, nursing, but also like law degrees, engineering degrees. Those schools, you typically have to study really, really hard. I mean, everyone knows how hard it is to pass the bar exam in law. So they're really spending a lot of time focused on their studies, and they tend to be a lot more professional as tenants because they probably take some professional classes as well, honestly. So they're a lot better tenants, and I get a lot of those, and also a lot of residents and fellowships through the clinics or through the hospitals. I usually like to be near top hospitals as well because that is also a really great population. And that's why I love this method, is because the tenant is a really high quality tenant. And so you don't have to deal with a lot of crap you might have to deal with like for sober living, where you're, dealing with somebody who's recovering from alcohol and is not the friendliest type and they get into fights and all that. Like student housing, you don't have that. So that's why I love student housing.
Got it. Are you providing like utilities and Wi-Fi and like pretty much everything to them, and they just pay you this monthly bill?
I actually do not include utilities. So I have my bookkeeper pull all the utility bills, add it up, divide it equally among like 6 tenants or 5 tenants or however many there are at the house. And then I'll charge them at the end of the month to be paid with the following month's rent.
So would you rather do that than as opposed to just building it into like, a higher rent?
I think, yeah, both of them, again, have pros and cons. But what I would say is I like doing this method because sometimes you have individuals coming in and it's a little bit harder. Like you kind of want them to self-regulate too. I really like them. If their energy bill is really high, I like them to like obviously use less energy and work out among themselves to use less energy. However, if you have like a group, for instance, you might be able to put the utilities under one of their names, and then they could charge back to other tenants. But to do that, they have to trust each other, right? So I only do that for groups.
Yeah, because, this particular house that I'm, doing, it's a 5-bedroom house, but each room has its independently
heating unit,
like a split, like a mini split for each bedroom, right? So,
yeah.
So I'm just trying to figure out like how I would then, and this is my first one with that kind of a heating system or cooling system. And so I'm trying to figure like how to navigate around that. And, I was talking to my wife about it, and she's like, oh, why don't we just increase the monthly so it's, we don't have to like justify, hey, you're using more than the others.
Right. You could add up all your utility bills throughout the year and then divide it. But I like to incentivize them to use less energy, and that's the biggest thing. Like I'd rather them, instead of just wasting a whole bunch of energy, you know, it being not so great for the environment, I'd like them to kind of self-regulate that as well.
Right, because you could charge more, but then that gives them no incentive to use less. And if the room is too hot, instead of turning off the heater, they just open the window.
Yeah, I've had like in the past, probably like 4 years ago, I had these tenants who like would keep the space heater on while they're in class, and it would just run throughout the whole day, 24/7. And then when we discovered that, we were like, guys, you're just like killing the electricity bill. And this was during the time when we included utilities, and after that, we're like, no, these guys have to also regulate their own energy usage and all that, just like you would as if you lived at a house yourself. You'll get a higher energy bill and then you'll lower it by using less energy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I didn't think about that aspect because then they will start to abuse it, right? Because they're like, it comes to the rent. We might as well take advantage of it.
I already paid for it, so yeah,
Yeah.
I'm gonna use it.
Yeah. And they don't really like turn off the AC when they're not at the house. They don't really care if in that case, or at least I found. So I like using incentives. I mean, it's a very good tool. You should definitely use it, and it's better for the environment too, right?
So do you do that for all the bills? Water, electric, I don't know, gas.
Yeah, either one person will pay it and they'll charge back the rest, or I will, add up the utilities and charge them at the end of the month to be paid with the next month's rent.
Got it. Now, how are you dividing it? You said just equally divided
Hmm.
divided by the room, right?
Many rooms there are, yeah. So there's six rooms.
You're not dividing by square footage of the bedrooms.
No, I'm not doing that. No, I mean that I try to make things fair, and I just set that rule at the very beginning, and I say this is how it's going to be. So if you guys have one person using a lot more energy, then you guys have to talk it over with that one person, obviously.
Let me ask you this question really quick. In terms of lease amounts, right? Because you're renting it with a room. How do you come up with the formula for whatever room charges are per
Oh,
room?
that okay. So yeah, that I do by square footage. So if it's like 100 square foot house, that's kind of like one of the smaller rooms. I'll charge maybe like 590, and then 120 square foot, I might charge like 630 or something like this. And then if it's like 150 square foot or more, I usually that's the higher end, like 650, 670, 690, potentially, or it depends on your market, right? A lot of them go like my ones in Stockton, I charge in the 700s. And I know in like SoCal and the Bay Area or Southern California and the Bay Area, rates are typically like $1,200 per month or higher for a room. So it just really depends on your market.
Right. And then so here's the other question I have for you, and this is really for anyone who's listening. Typically a lot of students would want to share rooms just so they save some costs. Do you then limit the amount of, I guess, people per room, or do you not care?
Yeah, I get that. So what I do is I charge 30% to 50% more. Usually 30% more if they have a couple in there. So a lot of times there will be a room that will have like a private bathroom. And so what I'll do is I'll say, let's say it's 1,000 per month. I'll charge 30% more. So it'll be 1,300 per month. But per person, that's only, what is that? 650 per month, right? So they save money on an individual basis, but they can share the room. And it also depends on how big the house is and how many bathrooms it has specifically, because you want to maintain like a 3 person to 1 bathroom ratio. And so what I try to do is make the bathroom shared if possible. And I want to make sure I have at least 2 shared bathrooms so I can get up to 6 tenants, because 2 times 3 per bathroom is 6. And 6 is a really good sweet spot when it comes to, renting out by the room, because 6 rooms times, let's say 700 a month is like 4,200 a month, which is really good cash flow. But also people feel comfortable staying with up to 6 people versus if you go past that, they start getting a little bit uncomfortable.
No, you said earlier that you're pricing it per square footage, right? Is that per square footage based on market square footage rent, or do you have a formula on how to actually increase that?
Yeah.
Because every market's different, right?
Right. Every market's different. I usually start, so you have to figure out what the rental rates are in that area. So that's called market research. And what you do is you go to like Facebook housing groups and you see what people are typically charging per room and see what the range is. And typically, because I'm very close to the school, I will actually charge near the higher end of the range. And I kind of base it off of the Facebook groups, but also you can look at like Craigslist rooms and shares. You can go to there's a website called Uloop and see what people are charging. Reddit is a really good place to see like what the range is. I'll just type in like whatever the university name is. So like University of Berkeley off-campus housing, and then I'll just read through the posts and see what people are charging and what people are looking for as far as their budget. And if you really don't know, you can always just call up student housing at the school or talk to students directly and ask them what their budget is.
Do you provide any cleaning services, or are they self-governing?
Yeah, so I do provide cleaning services at least once a year for all my rentals, sometimes quarterly, and then I'll charge back the students like $90 per student at the end of the year, which turns out to be like 90 times 6 is 540 a year, and I'll just charge them back. But like a lot of times, if they are messy, what I'll do is I'll have my property manager go in there and take photos of like evidence photos, right, of the dishes being dirty, the trash not being taken out, and then I'll send an email with all those photos to the whole group and say, hey, if this continues, like a second time, if we get photos again and it's like this, then we will be bringing in somebody like once a month to do all the cleanings, and we will be charging you guys back for that. And a lot of times after I send that letter, like I would say at least 9 out of 10 times, they're like, okay, we'll have a roommate discussion, and then they keep it clean.
I was going to say, have you had to hire the cleaner to come once a month yet? Have you had to?
I haven't, no. For the most part, yeah, they kind of discuss it among themselves. And we can, do up to like 2 warnings before we go to that extent.
How do you handle how do you handle their relationship?
Alvin's eating my food in the fridge. Get him, Ryan.
Do you do any kind of conflict resolution as well, or you let them handle that?
Yeah, so we do have house rules. We go over it with them. I have my VA kind of go through the list with them. But with that being said, yeah, you could have roommate conflict or housemate conflicts. And a lot of times, I kind of have a system for it. I do get their parent contacts for all them, like emergency contacts, just as a backup. But the first thing I do is I tell them, have a one-on-one discussion with that tenant, and then see if you can resolve it, like state why you're upset, come up with an actual plan, and then implement that plan over the next couple weeks or 2 weeks. And then if you're still having problems, give me a call, and then, I can go to the next step. The next step is typically having a one-on-one discussion, like the landlord or the property manager or the VA having a discussion with them about the issues. And if that doesn't get resolved, then you can go to the parents. And I've gone to step 3, talking to the parents at a couple times, I think twice I've been doing this for like 8.5 years, but I've only had to really do it twice. A lot of times, having them discuss it among themselves kind of helps work it out. Like I said, if it's about dishes, you can take pictures and send evidence to everyone. So it's like no denying that something has to be done. But yeah, that's kind of typically how I approach that part.
What happens when like Alvin and I are roommates, and then Alvin gets a girlfriend, and then he starts having the girlfriend come over all the time? Do you then go, hey, Alvin, you signed up as a solo person, but now you have a girlfriend? Do you then hit them with a 30% increase?
Yeah, I do that, actually. I won't just automatically do it, but I'll say, hey, look, if you're, other housemates are complaining that another person is, at the house, like pretty much full time. And if this continue, based off of our guest policy, you're allowed to have, I think it's 5. I have a weird guest policy, but they're allowed to be over like 5 times over the course of 60 days. So if it's more than that, then we have a talk and say like, okay, you have to pay 30% more. And I've had to do that before. I've had to actually charge somebody 30% more because they're like, oh yeah, my boyfriend or girlfriend has to live with me.
What if it's a different person, or is it just 5 times, no matter if it's the same person or different person? Because like Alvin, he can attract them quite well. And so he can have
Hey. I hope my wife isn't listening to this.
Serial dater or something.
Yeah. Back in the day, way, way, way before his wife.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it still applies. I mean, if they continue to have people over, like we have to have a discussion, you're going to have to pay 30% more, and it will be on you to pay that 30% because you're the one on the lease.
Ryan's non-discriminant.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
It's a what's it? Booty call tax.
Okay. Yeah, for the context. Oh, great. Oh
Yeah.
man. Okay.
Do you ever have the bedrooms with their own individual bathrooms? I hear that's pretty popular as well.
Yeah, it just depends on the city and the neighborhood. Sometimes the houses are built like in Texas. There's a lot of houses that have like 4 or 5 bathrooms as a standard. But a lot of the markets I'm in usually have like 2 bathrooms and or 2.5, and then we might convert the half to a full. But I like having at least 2 shared bathrooms. And sometimes we have to convert the private to a shared bathroom. But you need to have 2 shared bathrooms at least so that you can have 5 or 6 people per house.
But the rates are a lot higher, right? For that
Yes,
bedroom.
definitely. If you do have like 4 bathrooms, then yeah, definitely charge more for the private one. I would charge at least probably $100 to $250 more per room, depending on how big it is and how nice the bathroom is, etc.
Would you ever do the like non-grad student or like just like regular people who want to just save on housing costs and want to live in your pimp house?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of flexible. I mean, I'll bring in engineers and all that, but there's so much demand for like healthcare workers and for students and grad students where I invest that we don't really, have to take on those. And typically, our if you call our line, it says we rent exclusively. The first thing you hear is we rent exclusively to students and healthcare professionals at this time.
And then do you commingle the students and the healthcare professionals?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I think grad students and healthcare professionals like interns and residents and fellows kind of have similar goals and similar mindset. And so they kind of just match very well together.
Do the roommates ever like hook up with each other? Like they just like meet at the house and then
I don't know. It's possible. I really don't know too much about like the social aspect of what goes on at our houses in that sense.
You're getting like a wedding invitation.
Yeah, I don't think I've gotten that yet, but I've definitely had a lot of thank you letters about, the housing that I provide for sure. And like gifts, I don't know, chocolate or whatever.
Obviously, co-ed isn't something that you are preventing, right? Is there like a demand for just like, hey, this is women's only or men's only?
Yeah, there is. There definitely is, because there's some like cultures that, especially for females, I would just say like for Indian culture is a good example. They're not, a lot of times you're not allowed to live with a man until you're married. And, it's, not good if you do. So we do provide co-ed housing, but if we get enough people that say, hey, we want a female only house, then yeah, we'll put all the females together. It could be like a 3-bed, 1-bath. I have some apartment kind of use it like small multifamily units. So I'll have like 3 of them stay at a house, or I'll have like a group of 5 staying at a house that are all female. Yeah.
What about like locks for each bedroom? How does that work?
Yeah, that's a real tough one. I generally do privacy locks, but some people want it a step further. So I started doing kind of like a skeleton key, where every room has a lock, but the key can technically unlock the door.
Why not just use the keypad ones? Because you can have multiple codes in them.
Yeah, the problem with the keypad is unless you hardwire it, you run out of batteries. And I have 90 students, and I don't, changing 90 batteries is not really feasible. And having 90 different bedroom keys is also not very feasible if somebody loses their key. So generally like privacy locks, where you can use, it's called like a quick set key, where it's kind of like shaped like the edge tip is kind of like a paper clip. And they could use that to lock their door. Or like I said, there's people who want to take it a step further, and then we could, do a lock. And if you want an individual lock, you could also pay for that as well. We have that service if they really want it.
But you think, like, let's say right now I'm furnishing this particular property. You do have, just normal door locks, that with a pin that you can just push in and opens up. Is that adequate, or do you think you need to have other measures that they can be able to lock it from outside?
Well, it is legal. You're allowed to have privacy locks for sure. You have to be careful. Like we try to do the system where you put like a little hinge on the door, and then you could actually slide like a locker room type lock on it to lock the room from the outside. But the problem with that is you can lock somebody in, and then that person can get out. So that like an inspector came over and said, yeah, you're not allowed to do that. So you have to be a little bit careful with it. So that's why privacy locks are ideal. But nowadays we've been kind of converting some of the houses so that the locks use a master key, like a skeleton key. So technically they have access if they really want to like go into another person's room, but that's really, I've never had that happen before. But it does give them a little bit more sense of security. Like somebody from the outside who broke into the house couldn't like get in very easily because they wouldn't have the key. So we have that as well. But you have to be careful because you can't just, do the padlock method where you lock somebody in.
Sure. Well, what about like Wi-Fi? I think Hoan asked for Wi-Fi before. Do you provide the Wi-Fi? And is that something you pay for?
Yeah, so it's just like all the other utilities. I have the bookkeeper pull the bills, add it all up, and then divide it by 6 or 5, however many tenants there are.
I do think the keypad though would be a real good solution for you. I mean, the battery thing, you can just put it on the student themselves to change the battery. It's not like you got to change it often even. Like you can put the batteries in and it'll last a year, 2 years, 3 years sometimes. So
yeah, I mean, it's definitely a method we explored. It's also very expensive though. It's like $200 per lock.
Dude, they're expensive.
No, guys, you guys are spending way too much money. No, they got the Quickset Powerbolt 250. And what's cool is you can even rekey the actual hard key to be one key for all of your houses. Like for all 90 locks could be that one key. So if any student ever gets locked out, just that one key can always open the door. But the codes can be different. And as a student moves in or out, like let's say one student moves in or out, you can just delete their code out of their bedroom door as well as the front door without interrupting anybody else.
Interesting.
Yeah.
How much is it per unit for that one?
So I went to Home Depot one time and I saw it on sale. It was $40.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. So you can snag them on sale sometimes, and if they have them.
But you have to manually reprogram each lock, right?
Sure.
That's the thing with that. Yeah.
I mean, how often are you? Look, if they have a key, then you still gotta like reprogram. You gotta like change the lock or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. So
that's true.
So you still have to do that kind of stuff. At the very least, when it's a code, you can just delete the code, right? And you can pre-program a whole bunch of codes in there, and then just like delete their one, and there's already the second one already like ready for the next tenant.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, it's definitely possible.
So it doesn't have to be $200. No, there's much cheaper ones for sure.
Yeah, we want to make this definitely. We want the students to feel that they have their privacy, obviously.
Right.
We also, want to make it so it's not too difficult. Our property manager doesn't have to go down there constantly for lockouts and stuff like that. That's why the privacy locks are kind of like, the best in turn for us, but students don't feel comfortable all the time with the privacy lock.
And changing the batteries are super easy because it's four AA batteries. It's just one screwdriver, and you can send out an email to all of the tenants, and you can do it way early because like, let's say the battery lasts 2 years. You can send out an email at like month 6 and go, hey guys, just a reminder, replace the batteries. So not hard. And then it's a good sales feature because the first thing I think I would do is like, hold up. All they got to do to get into my room is press this button and they can unlock my door. I don't feel very safe with that. Like all my stuff is in there, So having that digital thing would be.
Yeah. And another thing we can offer though, that we do offer students is like, there's these motion sensor detectors, like the Kangaroo, for example. I think Kangaroo is only like $10 or something, and it links to your app and it'll tell you if there's movement in your room. You just put it on the wall and it will give you an alert on their phone if something or somebody comes into your room. Just
hey, Ryan, the Kangaroo app keeps telling me that somebody's in my room. This lock sucks.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've done that, and I've never had anybody like say, "Oh yeah, somebody came into my room" or something like this. Um, the only, I guess, exception to that is sometimes we have to show the rooms because the new tenant who's coming in wants to see the room right before they move in, and so we will coordinate with the tenant and say, "Hey, this person's coming in at this time. Can they go ahead and just peek in your room? They don't have to actually step in the room, but they can kind of peek in the room from the doorway, and that's how we, show our rooms."
Let's talk about that a little bit, because I know when you and I were talking, and you were kind of coaching me on this, and this is just really for the listeners. You know, how do you show the rooms? Like, what is your strategy on that? Especially you're doing all of these remotely, right? And obviously, sometimes you don't have a property manager on site. Let's talk about your strategy and how you actually handle that portion.
Oh yeah, I like a good incentive structure. So what I do for that is I do allow the tenants to show the rooms, because a lot of times the tenant can give a lot of good information about actually living at the house. And a lot of these prospective tenants, they want to know what it's like actually living at the house. So using a realtor or property manager, they can't really speak to that. And so the best person for these prospective tenants to talk to is actual tenants there now. And so what I do is I offer these current tenants $25 for every showing. And that's like regardless if the person signs a lease or not. And they get an additional $25 if they can convince that person to sign a lease. So they could basically be making $50 per tenant and $25 per every tenant. And I think one person showed like 30 students to one of our quadruplexes. And I mean, I think he got like $600 from it, or, it was a lot. So, I think it's totally worth it.
I would just talk badly about the property every single time. Like, dude, you don't want to live here. This place is terrible, right? Get paid $25. And then Ryan has to put a new prospective tenant in there. And he shows it. It's like, man, you know what sucks? It's really cold and it's really hot and you can never be comfortable and people steal your food. You don't want to live here. And he gets paid another $25.
Oh man!
I
hope he wasn't doing that, but I would say most people don't think that way,
because as soon as they rent it,
like to help me out. Yeah.
We're cutting that off of this recording, by the way,
because as soon as it's rented, the money train is over, right? As soon as it's rented, the money train stops.
Oh geez.
Yeah,
well, there you go.
So we have that, but we also allow our property manager to go over there, and we pay her like $35 per visit, essentially, if they want it. If it's easier to get in touch with the property manager versus the students. And some houses are like that. The students are very busy, and even with the incentive structure, they might feel like, oh, it's not worth it. But I would say it's like over 50% of them are, feel it's definitely worth it to do a tour.
How are you finding these properties? Are you just looking on the MLS? Is it just like pure agents? Are you doing off-market stuff? Or because it cash flows so well, you're like, dude, I'll pay market all day long?
Yeah. So every single year since 2016, which was when I started, I've bought at least one student rental. And that's because even if the interest rates are high like they are now, and I think they came down a little bit since their peak, it doesn't really matter. Like, it makes maybe a couple hundred, like $200 difference, $300 difference, whatever. That doesn't make a huge difference in terms of the cash flow for student housing, because you're renting out per room. If the mortgage is like, $1,500, $2,000 a month, but you're, with 6 bedrooms, you're charging like $4,200. There's a lot of room. There's still a lot of cash flow. And then what I say is always just like during this environment, buy now, and then you can refinance later when the rates drop. And, obviously there's no guarantee they'll drop or when they'll drop, whatever. But, there's at some point they will drop in the next 10 years. That part is almost a guarantee. So I just buy every year because as long as you're cash flow positive and you have a really good cash flow, like we do with student rentals, you really minimize your risk.
And then what kind of financing do you leverage here? Do you use DSCR loans, interest only?
Yeah.
Like,
I think I have I want to say I'm peaking on the conventional loans because you can only have up to 10 Freddie Mac loans. And I think 8 of those right now. So the rest of them are DSCR loans. And DSCR is, for the listeners, if you don't know, it's kind of like a commercial type loan, but it's a hybrid almost. It's like you can get a 30-year fixed rate still on a DSCR. But instead of using your personal income to qualify you, it uses the potential rental income based off the appraisal report that the property could generate to qualify you. So you actually don't need to show your W-2, your pay stubs, that type of stuff.
Yeah, they call them like low doc because you're not showing all that stuff. But are they basing it off of your co-living $600 bedroom thing, or are they basing it off of
They're just basing it off of like what's the typical rent in the area.
Yeah, it's usually market rent, and depending on some lenders, they'll go up to like 20%, higher rate, especially if you already have a lease agreement kind of in place. So they might accept it depending on the lender. You just have to really have that communication. But the interesting thing about DSCR loans, I actually use a lot of them now. I like the interest only period. Yeah,
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah.
most of the time, I like the 10-year interest only because I know me, like I'm probably going to refinance it, pull some cash out within 10 years anyway, especially in Los Angeles, because I've always discovered that paying a mortgage down here in these high appreciating areas doesn't even make a dent. So why do I put myself in that pressure of having to pay down the principal when really the leverage is really, coming as a bonus anyway?
Yeah,
So yeah,
exactly.
man, I love those, man. Like I love DSCR loans.
Yeah, and for those, you have the option to pay down the principal still.
You do, exactly.
Yeah, there's nothing that stops you, right? The only thing is if you pay off the whole loan earlier, then there's like a 1 or 2%, 3% fee. There's like a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then 3, 2, 1 structure, right? But what I would say for that is it's easier to qualify for the DSCR loan because you only need to qualify for being able to the rent to be able to cover the interest portion of the loan, which makes it a lot easier for sure.
Yeah, and it's like either 1.1 or 1.2. I have lenders right now that offer you 1% even.
Yeah.
DSCR like 1-on-1 ratio.
Yeah, definitely. It's like 1.1 to 1.25. Like
I don't think you answered the question earlier, Ryan. But are you just buying properties that are on market at full retail, or are you getting like discounted?
Right. Yeah, they're pretty much all on market. I think I had maybe 2 off market details at most, but everything's on market. And I just put an offer on day one. Like I'm constantly like looking at Zillow and all of that. And so I would say like at least half the properties I bought, I put an offer on like day 1 or day 2. So I just value speed. It's easier to, be speedy versus having to look for off market deals and calling people, calling potential sellers and looking through listings that just went off the market, all that type of stuff. I'd rather not spend my time doing all of that. But I know people like Thatch or whatever. That's kind of like a big thing.
What about like, I know like a lot of co-living models, they close off like dens. They even close off like living rooms and just make everything a bedroom. Do you do that? Like, what's your formula when it comes to that? Do you add rooms?
A lot of times the houses. It just depends on the market and the neighborhood specifically. But a lot of times I look for houses that are 1,500 or 1,700 square foot because they usually have like these extra spaces or they have some extra rooms, like a bonus room, an office. Maybe they have a living room and family room. And so all I have to do in those cases, a lot of times is either like it might be like by itself already, I just put in furniture, or I might have to put up some drywall and a door, and then that will convert the room. But it's very cost efficient. It's only like 1,500, 2,500 to put up some walls a lot of times. And, you could have an extra room making like $700 a month, which is like, 8,500 a year or whatever, 8,400 a year. And so it's totally worth it. Yeah. It pays for itself within a few months.
Yeah, because like, right now I have that 5-bedroom house I was telling you about, but one of them has a pretty large master bedroom with its bathroom and even has a closet. And when I designed this thing, I thought, oh, this is pretty small. But when I actually walked it, I'm like, shit, maybe I should split this into 2 rooms and just have 2 bedrooms with 1 shared bathroom. What do you think about that?
Yeah, there's definitely some requirements. So you want to make sure it's at least 70 square foot in most cities. Sometimes it's up to 100. You have to have 100 square foot. So like 10 by 10. And you do have to make sure you have a window or an exterior
for egress.
Door.
Yeah.
Egress. Yeah, is what they call it. An exterior door or a window to that room. So and then the ceiling height has to be like 7 foot, generally speaking. And that's pretty much the main requirements for a bedroom. Sometimes, like very rare, I would say like California, for example, they don't require a closet. I call it the city and all of that, but it depends. Like some cities do want some sort of closet. But a lot of times I do just provide like a standing closet. But yeah, I mean, it's not too hard to convert a bedroom as long as it's a large enough size, and as long as it's not like a Harry Potter room or something, you know.
I could say, like, at least in Los Angeles, like in terms of the closet, um, it's not required, but it is required if you want to consider it on permit as a bedroom. It has to have a closet. Now, that being said, it doesn't need to be a built-in closet. You could just buy something in IKEA and like secure it to the wall, and all of a sudden it's part of the structure and it becomes a legal bedroom.
Yeah.
Yeah. So little hack right there. Little key. Little key.
There's the key. All right, we can end the episode. That was it. Bolt on a closet. There you go. But in terms of scaling and what you're doing, are you running into any issues with growing, or are you moving at the pace that you like? Are you just continuing to buy one property at a time, and you're just getting rich that way, just one property at a time, knocking it out?
Yeah, so for scaling, I would say you do want to be a little bit careful with keeping good relationships. So we did have like a student, like one or two students complained to the school, and it kind of hurt our affiliation with the school because the place, you know, was a little bit messy, and we didn't do a good job like cleaning it between the two tenants. And our cleaners, you know, honestly, we kind of use a different cleaner set now, as you can imagine. But yeah, you do have to be very careful about your reputation, because it's like they say, like, your reputation can be destroyed in a day. So, you know, we're working with the school to kind of repair that. And that kind of just came with scaling. Like, our ads appear everywhere. And so like, everyone knows us, it seems like now. So, yeah, if you're, you know, bringing in 60, 80, 90 students, you're going to get a reputation. The school is going to know you, as well as like neighbors and stuff potentially. So I think the biggest thing is just, you know, make sure you bring in the right students, make sure you do have to do a little bit of policing here and there, but you just have to have a system for it, right? Like, you have like SOP, this is what we do if this happens. And you just got to make sure that those SOPs are implemented. Right.
What are some of the things that happen? Like, for someone who has no experience in this, other than like Alvin taking my sandwich out of the refrigerator that's like shared, like what other issues are you dealing with?
Well, they're just so random. I mean, it's not super common, by the way. So like, for 6 years, I only had like one incident where that was when I was just starting, where I had a problem with one of the tenants smoking pot. And that was an issue, and it was illegal in California back then. So the cop came over and all that. But that was it for like the first 6 years. So if you're scaling slowly and you're just buying one property a year, it's all good. But if you're scaling quickly and buying like 2 or 3 or 4 a year, then that's kind of when I started running into issues. One of the issues, I'm trying to remember exactly. So one of my VAs, he put a female in a house with like 5 other guys, something like four or 5 other guys, and she felt very uncomfortable with it. And she was like, why am I with a bunch of males? I don't feel safe here, with that. And yeah, as you can imagine, what we did is we, tried to place her at a different place, but she was very unhappy already. And so, she complained to the school and everything. But what we do nowadays is we do like kind of a housemate matching thing. So we ask them, do you prefer co-ed, or are you okay with co-ed, or, do you want female only, or do you prefer more, majority females or whatever? Just kind of try to see what their preferences are. Right. And then we'll try to place them accordingly.
And what's your, you touched on this a little bit, that you have VA. So what is your team structure look like?
Yeah, so I do have a full-time VA. He's based in the Philippines, and we pay $5 to $7. Basic pay is like $5 to $7 an hour in the Philippines, and we're paying $7 an hour. If you get up to like $13 or $14 an hour in the Philippines, that's actually considered 6 figures in the U.S. So we're able to be, a little bit cost efficient with that. But they're actually making really good pay still. And they're super motivated compared to some of the VA hires I've had in, California or in the United States, for instance. So we have a really good full-time rockstar VA, and we pay him very well for the Philippines. And we do have a bookkeeper. So that the bookkeeper is about 20 hours a week or so. And I think he charges us $1,200 a month to do all of the bookkeeping for all of my 14 properties, and then 15 if you include the flip. And then we do have like an accountant and stuff like that, and then a local boots on the ground property manager. And we pay her on a per case basis. So I do, me and the VAs, I taught my VAs how to do all the marketing, how to, get the tours and all of that. And the boots on the ground mainly is there to make sure the maintenance gets done correctly, make sure that the tours are being done. If the students don't do it, then she will do it. And then she kind of charges on a per case basis. So it might be like, $30 here, $35 there, maybe $60 to do a full home inspection and just go through a checklist and mark every, water stain at the house, etc. But yeah, because I do all the marketing, I don't give them like an 8 to 12%, which is what some people do, right? Or 8 to 10% of the total rental income. I just do on a per case basis. And it's more than fair. We have like 9 or 8 properties there, and she's like there's constantly work to do. And she really likes the job that she does.
And why like do this yourself as opposed to like going with a company like a pad split? Is there a difference for you? Like,
yeah, I believe pad split does take a huge cut, but you're also reliant on their platform. So you're relying on their algorithms. I know when our Airbnb changed their algorithm, a lot of people saw a huge loss in sales, a lot more vacancies. So if pad split ever changes their, algorithm or whatever, it could definitely affect your business. And I don't like, not being in control. I like something that I'm, in control of, something that I can call my own. And so that's why I kind of created this system of, training the VAs, having these SOPs, having these processes where you can empower the tenants to do things like give tours and all of that. So that, it's cost efficient. You don't have to pay like a 10% fee or 50% fee to the company. But 2, I get to choose my own tenants. It's just it's a lot better, in my opinion.
And then also like pad split does, I don't know if they still do this. As I recall, they don't really do a lease. They do like a membership kind of thing. Like,
I think that's a gray area. I think I've read about that. I don't do that. I do leases, just to be on the right side of things. But yeah.
They do that membership thing because in different cities, they have a limit of how many unrelated tenants could live together. Yeah, unrelated parties that can live together. But if they're not tenants and they're members, then that law is essentially a moot point because it's like, oh,
it's supposed to be.
Yeah, it's supposed to be.
If somebody stays at your house and is essentially a tenant, if it walks like a duck, it acts like a duck, it's a duck, right? Or talks like a duck, it's a duck. So if somebody's staying there longer than 30 days, then I would say that should be on a lease. But that's just my opinion. I don't know. I know, like, what's his name, Atkins or something like that. He has, he's trying to do this thing. I don't know how it's going to roll over time. I do like having legit leases and everything, and I like choosing my tenants. So, but yeah, yes, you might have some cities like that. And so one thing you might have to do is like a change of use to a rooming house, or you might have to buy in a specific area. It just really depends on the city. And there are like plenty of cities that don't really have huge restrictions or whatnot. But if there are, then again, there's ways around it. You can even do a zoning variance if you wanted to, but that's like last step. But every city you can technically apply for a zoning variance.
Yeah, I know in Los Angeles, it's probably similar to like, the assisted living model, which is, I looked in the city, I think up to 6 unrelated parties or something like that, at least in SoCal, like for, special assisted living, like you're limited to 6 beds by right. Yeah, and then you get a variance called, conditional use permit, where you can go a little bit higher, but it requires some kind of zoning. It requires, approval from all your neighbors, which is kind of a pain in the ass. But anyways, dude, listen, man, we can go all over the place here. Like, I know Hoan's like,
I got more.
Like he's got more questions, but we're like almost at the top of the hour here. So let's what do you want to do, Hoan? Trial of success?
I want to ask him more questions.
All right, one last question for Hoan. How about that?
Let's see. One last question. All right, I'll give you an easy one. Are you typically buying turnkey properties, or are you buying properties that require value add? Like, what are you looking for?
Yeah, so they are turnkey. I do very light renovations, just putting up the walls and the door to create those extra bedrooms. But other than that, no, I'm not making any huge modifications to the house. The only exception might be converting a half bath into a full bath, so that we can have enough bathrooms for everyone. But yeah, other than that, yeah, there's very light renovations, and so that's why I really love this method. It's really low cost to everyone. It makes a lot of sense for the students that come in. Your students are going to be really happy that they got affordable housing. It's a really niche market and not a whole lot of competition. And the cash flow, like I said, like in California, might be like 1,500 a month to 2,000. But out of state, I mean, since I started investing out of state, it's like 225. Well, I would say 2,200 to our highest being about I think it's 4,000 or 4,500 a month. And so, yeah, it's really good cash flow for just like a single family home or a duplex. And it's a good way for a lot of people to get started and to scale, because if you only make like $100 a month in cash flow, it's very hard to scale as a real estate investor. But if you're, making like 2,000 a month in cash flow, like 24K a year, after like 3 properties, you have another down payment every single year. So,
sorry, one more question. So, are you looking only at the single families and duplexes, or are you going larger and also buying triplexes, quadplexes, sixplex, tenplex, whatever, and doing
yeah,
the
our
same thing?
largest is a quadruplex. But generally, I would say 80% of my houses are single families and duplexes.
And then in the duplexes and quadplex and all that, how many bedrooms are in those per unit?
Yeah, so usually if it's like a quad, it'll be like at least 3. Like I try to get 3, again, 3-person to 1 bathroom ratio. So I try to get a 3-1 into those, the smaller ones at least. And then a lot of like the duplexes, it'll be 5-2. So 5 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. Just depends on the structure of the house. And some duplexes are like in California, they're a lot smaller, but like out of state, or, wherever, it could be 1,500, 1,800 square foot per side in a duplex.
Really? So it's 5 bed, 2 bath in one unit of the duplex. So you're talking 10 bedrooms, 4 bath in this duplex.
Yeah, that's right.
Wow.
We have, I think, I'm trying to remember if I have 2. I have 2 of those. Yeah, I definitely have 2 of those.
All right.
There you go.
All right.
Any more questions, Hoan?
I got tons.
He does have a coaching program, so you're gonna have to pay for the next question.
There you go.
Actually, you know what, Ryan? Let's talk about your coaching program, man, because obviously that's how you and I have been talking too. And, I actually hired Ryan to coach me on this like last year, and now he's like, he's here at the podcast. So
Yeah,
let's talk about that.
I know it's been a journey. So student housing is how I got into real estate, and I found it quite easy to scale. I bought at least 1 property a year in California, like I said, and I just reinvested cash flow every time. And I think it's a great way for a private landlord to just, get into real estate without having to take on partners, capital partners, raising money, all of that type of stuff. You don't have to do all that with this method. You can just start and build it up on the side while working full time. I worked full time for like 3.5 years, then I cut down to 32 hours, and I was doing this on the side the whole time. And so it's a great way for like a professional to get started in real estate, or anybody. In fact, as long as you have the down payment, you definitely need to have some funds to get started into real estate. I don't recommend this, 0 down, no cash in the bank, starting real estate. That's a recipe for disaster for sure. But yeah, like if you are looking to get mentorship, I do offer a 6-month mentorship program where it is one-on-one with me, and we just focus on getting you a deal, your first, student housing, profitable rental. And everything from A to Z, from doing the market research, doing the deal analysis, renovating, figuring out where we put those extra rooms, renting it out, managing it, etc. And I do have like a free PDF about it as well. You can go to www.newbierealestateinvesting.com/guide. That's www.newbierealestateinvesting.com/guide. I do have, I think there's a coaching link as well. I think it's newbierealestateinvesting.com/real-estate-coaching. But I can have Alvin, put the link maybe in the show notes or something. whatever you guys have.
Sounds good, man. All right. So last question. Hoan, you want to take it home with the...
Yeah, of course. Well, as you know, quest for keys, man. We're looking for these keys, and we're looking for success. And we believe that there's this triad of success, where it's built on three essential pillars. That's the health, that's the wealth, and that's the relationships. So tell us how you've been able to manage this balance between these three pillars so that you can have the awesome life that you have.
Yeah. So health, I go to jujitsu 5 to 7 times a week, and each session is like an hour to an hour and a half. And so I do that religiously. I think it's really
That's a
important.
lot. 5 to 7. Wow, my man.
Yeah.
5 to 7 is a lot.
Yeah. Some days I'll go twice, so I might take the next day off.
14.
Hoan takes
I
jujitsu.
go pretty religiously. They see me there all the time. It's weird. If I'm not there, then they're asking why did you miss class? But yeah, that was great. We said health, wealth, and relationships.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So for the wealth aspect, I believe in abundance, right? Having an abundance mindset. So just being open to options and always persevering, even though things get tough. I think that's the hardest thing for a lot of real estate investors. They get, things happen, right? The pipes break, burst, and you have to pay a couple thousand, 5,000 to replace those. The HV conks out, so you have to put in 12,000 to replace that, or a roof, or whatever. It goes on, right? You will probably deal with one of those issues if you're a real estate investor. So the most important thing is just to realize that properties appreciate. You're making money in multiple ways, right? You're getting the cash flow, you're getting the appreciation, the loan pay down, the tax benefits, and it all works out in the end. I'll tell you, after 8 years, real estate has built wealth more than anything else, more than NVIDIA stock or Tesla stock. You know what I mean? And then as far as relationships, I do have a significant other, and I do a lot of stuff with my family. We go out to escape rooms like every other week. So I think we've done like 50 of them just together with my parents, my brother, and my girlfriend. So yeah, I spend a lot of time with them, and we do movie nights too. So I think it's really important to have, all three of those pillars.
All right. I have one last question for you, dude. So we talk about dragons here. Dragons are challenges and fears, right?
Yeah.
Is there a challenge or a dragon that you're facing right now?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just really we bought some old houses, and so the trouble isn't like getting students in the houses. We got a really good marketing system. We have people coming in. We have, again, some of them booked out to 2027. The biggest challenge right now is maintaining those older properties. So we're just having, like during the winter, frozen pipes. We got some pinhole leaks with that. We had to replace a furnace, and it was only like 4 years old. And the warranty wouldn't cover a full replacement. I was like, geez, wow. So I had to replace a furnace. And then, there's like miscellaneous things that kind of come up. And so it's just really important to have a good set of talent, right? You do have to have, when you're starting out, if you have free time, try your best to start vetting HVAC contractors, electricians, that is, plumbers, and boots on the ground people, handymen, so that you have people available to respond to these emergencies. One of the biggest emergencies I had was the furnace went out, and I think it took 3 or 4 days before we found somebody who was able to get in there and get it done within about 2 days or so. So it's such a hassle to have space heaters throughout the whole house, and the students being really cold. It's like freezing cold down there, and I get it. It's very painful, and it was not something we wanted on anyone. And you just got to have the right people, though. And so we found the right HVAC company to do the job. They knew exactly what they were talking about, and they got it done.
Well, there you go, guys.
I just downloaded your guide. It's good. It's nice.
So Ryan, how do people get a hold of you? I know you mentioned it earlier, but do you have a social media or anything like that? What else? How else can people reach out?
You could. I feel comfortable giving out my number. It's 916-367-3415 if you want to contact me there. Or the best way is probably just going onto the website, and then you'll basically get emails from me, and then you can reply to those emails. It's www.newbierealestateinvesting.com. And again, if you want the free PDF guide, you just do /guide.
There you go.
Oh, I'm also on Instagram. I try to not use it, too much. But if you want to connect with me on Instagram, it's CAO 8888. Very Asian Instagram. CAO.
8888888888.
Yeah. But again, like I respond more by email. So just sign up on that site at the PDF, and then you'll get emails from me, and then you can reply.
This is awesome. Well, great show. Ryan, we just bombarded you with questions. We didn't really talk about dragons. We were just tell us more about the student rentals. But I think our guests are going to like that. Right. And you did a great job. Did a really great job.
So, yeah. I love the niche. It's honestly probably, in my opinion, it's the best, or one of the best at the very least. And getting you cash flow, getting you started, and it's accessible to anyone.
Well, there you go, folks. We'll be back on our next episode. And I guess this is a wrap.
All right. That's the show. Thanks, guys. See you next time.
Thank you.